For this podcast that has prided itself on covering Tech's Olympic sports, it's a shame we haven't had anyone from either tennis team make it on the pod in the 6 year history of it. So we're finally solving that problem today. And these two gentlemen are the first ones to grace us with their presence. So from the Georgia Tech men's tennis team, we have Kenny Thorne and Kevin King. Y'all, welcome so much to the Scions of the Southland.
Thank you. Pleasure to be on.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. For those listening, if these names aren't familiar to you, they're both alumni. Very important thing here. But these are the head coach and assistant coach of the Georgia Tech men's tennis team. And so before we get into what 2024 is going to look like for y'all, I want to ask how y'all both got to Tech, because those stories are always fun for us. So, Candy, I'll start with you since you were first here. What led you to apply to Tech? What was your student life like? Just give us that story.
Yes, I was okay. It was back in the 80s, if you remember that far back. But
I was not alive.
I was looking for a very good school that was going to meet my academic desires, and I wanted to probably go into something engineering and also a good tennis school, tennis city. And so when I visited Georgia Tech, it was a natural fit. And I came here right after I graduated in 1984 and spent 4 years and little extra. We're on the quarter system at the time. So spent a couple, I think one extra quarter here. Came in with a good friend of mine, Brian Shelton, at the same time, who was the women's coach here. Both graduated, and I would say my buddy here, Kevin King, graduated a little more honors than I did. I actually got out, and
yeah, it was a different era back then. It was a different era in terms of
it's a little different. I'll
yeah.
say we can tell those stories later. But went on the pro tour for about 8 years, and then had the pleasure of coming back and being assistant coach for one season, and then took over as head coach right after that. So it's an honor, a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad we've kept you around as long as we have. There's a lot of the tech lifers are the fun ones to talk to. Kevin, obviously much more recent story, but and one that's going to align closer to mine since I was here the last 5-6 years. But how did you get to Tech?
Yeah, so I grew up in Atlanta, started playing tennis at a young age, and knew a lot about the Georgia Tech program. But growing up, my main goal was to play professional tennis. And like Kenny said, he had a great pro career, and he had a great reputation of being a developmental coach. So I knew that's something I was really looking forward to in college. Other than that, with the academics, I enjoyed math and science growing up. Didn't really know anything about engineering, but it seemed like a good fit, and I really wanted to make the most and get a good education. So it really was a perfect fit, and I was able to play pro tennis afterwards for 8 years, just like Kenny. And when the opportunity came to coach here under Kenny, it was a no-brainer.
That's awesome. Does Kenny ever give any back in my day kind of things? Always that you both three are very different times.
Yeah, a little bit. I think myself and the current students sometimes need a little perspective of how it used to be. So he brings a great view on things.
Fortunately, they didn't have the iPhones back then, so you didn't have video as much as you do now, so you can make up a lot more stories.
I remember hearing the stories about having to go to the gym to like sign up for classes and stuff like that. Like there's so many different things I've heard from folks that were here at least students.
The computer lab. You had the computer lab.
That's right. Yeah,
the computer lab to do your CS homework, and you had to wait on a computer. So
that is amazing.
Yeah, so that was interesting at the time.
Very interesting. I was there for the last days of T Square. That was the first thing I saw die while I was at Tech before they shifted to Canvas. So, and that thing felt old when I was on that thing too. So, I want to ask about, well, I guess talk about things that have changed over time. I wanted to ask about tennis recruiting and how that's changed over time, because I only played no more than just playing with folks in my neighborhood, played with my dad and stuff like that. And I know there's a lot of really good talent in Atlanta and at Georgia as well. But looking at the roster, there's only so many spots you have, but you got your Georgians, but you got some Europeans, you got a guy from California. How has over time recruiting changed? Has it gone from a more just whoever you have locally to you can spread your wings internationally throughout the U.S.? How's that gone?
Yeah, I think in in the past, we've tried to get as many Georgia players as possible. It's been a goal of ours, and the U.S. players. Tennis is such an international sport. It's easy to jump out and head anywhere in Europe, and tennis is probably your second most popular sport. So you're getting your best athletes in tennis in a lot of these different countries. But we felt like Georgia has done a good job developing players, so we wanted to get the top players out of Georgia, and we've had some pretty good success doing that. And then give our American players the best chance to develop and hopefully go on the pro tour after they graduate here. So recruiting has, I would say recruiting has changed a ton over the past 3 years.
Okay.
It's probably not as much throughout my first 20 years or so, or 22 or 3 years. And literally, obviously, with the NLI and all the other things that have come up here, things have started to change very rapidly. But Georgia has been known to have some of the best players. We were fortunate to get Kevin, who's one of the top players out of Georgia, as well as one of the top in the nation. And so we really felt like, and obviously, you get a Georgia player, they know the rivalries, they know you're not having to teach them anything. Some of the guys from, we brought in international have to learn the college system, have to learn some of the rivalries, have to kind of understand things, which it doesn't take long. They're all competitors, so they get it. But it is good to have a good mix of players from a lot of different areas. We have guys that go over to Europe in the summers and stay with some of the guys on the team that are from there, and they get an experience to play tournaments over there. So I think it's very important to have an international player or two on the team and to have that experience for your other players.
Yeah, you mentioned NIL. I guess that obviously that changes everything sports wise. What have y'all noticed in terms of how you've wanted to, or like how have you approached that? Is that something you want to attack early? Or is that just we'll keep doing some of the same and then figure it out from there? What's been the idea there?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. I just started, this is my third season, so the NIL was starting kind of when I was coming in. But I think it's starting to play more and more of a role in the recruiting. I think the whole fundraising side of it is really interesting, and I feel like the rules are constantly changing on what you can do, what you can't do. But I know historically college sports, it's more of an amateur sport, so it's kind of finding that balance of really supporting the players, getting as much as you can for them, but also keeping that amateur feel in college tennis before they go out onto the pro tour. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic, but it's been fun learning the ins and outs of it.
Which I guess there's the unique challenge of it too, is that of all sports, tennis is one where you can play pro sooner than most other sports as well. So I know Andres has played in some tournaments. I've seen him at the Atlanta Open and stuff like that. So I guess that's just another thing to add into that. Well, you never know when you could be playing bigger tournaments, but then also getting some of that money just from playing at Tech as well. So
right. Well, there's an interesting thing. You can play pro tournaments and you can get NIL money unlimited.
Yeah.
The prize money is regulated.
Yeah, right.
So you cannot get more prize money than your expenses. So he could, like Andres could go play the Atlanta Open. If he makes $6,000, he has to have $6,000 of expenses, but the expenses can be throughout the whole year. So if you're playing other pro tournaments throughout the year and accumulate those expenses, but by the year end, it has to.
Interesting. So he's booking the best hotel room at Atlantic Station when he's playing the Atlanta Open.
Hopefully, that means he's winning. So yeah,
that's right. Yeah. I mean, top floor of the 12. I hope he's getting that.
That's right.
That'd be good stuff. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Chris Eubanks on a Georgia Tech tennis episode. Kevin, I know you played with him in the pro circuit some, and then we're in the box in London at Wimbledon. I've watched Wimbledon my whole life, and I've got to ask, like, what is it like to be in one of the most unique places to watch tennis, and then be there during literally a globally famous run at the same time?
It was incredible. I think growing up, for most tennis players, myself included, Wimbledon was the one tournament that you look up to is,
Mhm.
you know, the one you want to be at, the one you want to play at. And just being there, being able to see Chris's run was really special. He's done such a great job representing Georgia Tech, and you know, just to be a little part of that was really cool. But it's really a magical feeling going out there, watching him on some of the stadium courts and
Mhm.
seeing the success he's having. It was really special.
I never thought I'd hear Brad Gilbert during just the side studio parts just saying rambling wreck like 5 times a day. I did not have that on my bingo card for last year. Were you wearing Georgia Tech gear intentionally during those matches too? Because that is some elite branding for the
So I was
institute to have.
actually over there recruiting at junior Wimbledon. So
Okay.
when Chris wasn't playing, I was on the outside courts watching the juniors play. So I was in all Georgia Tech gear, and when Chris would play, I'd hop over, watch the
Oh,
match.
nice.
Obviously, still in the Tech gear, so that worked out well.
So
That's
we
really cool.
actually had that. He had this GT hat that right before he was leaving, he had this little bit older GT hat.
Mhm.
And Rodney Harmon, our women's coach, came up to him and said, "You can't wear that hat. You're going over there." So he brings that. He just received these hats that day and gave him this gold GT
Oh, that's
beautiful
fantastic.
hat. And that was the hat that Kevin had on TV. Little did he know that thing was going to be on TV the whole time.
That's
So
amazing.
it was a good give.
Good timing.
Good stuff by Rodney. Did y'all notice any outside of the press that came with the fact that it's like, okay, yeah, Chris played at Georgia Tech. That was the way he could relate to the American audience. Was there any extra attention to the program just as a whole that was maybe just a little more than you would usually get on a standard summer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially in the recruiting side of things, a lot more people saw the name Georgia Tech, saw Chris Eubanks doing well.
Mhm.
We love developing players, and I think having a player that came through here have that kind of success really kind of opened the door to some conversations with some more people. And I think outside of athletics, also in the school, there was a lot of recognition for Chris, and I
Yeah.
think that was really great for the program, great for the school as a whole.
Yeah, we had I was actually recruiting down at the national clay courts at the time, and the clubhouse there where everybody was playing was showing Wimbledon.
Mhm.
So I would, instead of going out there, I would kind of rally people to come in and let's just watch Wimbledon. And so Chris just happened to be on there, so it was a pretty popular time. But we did get calls, and like Kevin said, from worldwide, in and outside of tennis, which was really special to have that kind of recognition. And
That's cool.
we had the honor of going just recently up to President Cabrera, and Chris presented him with the Wimbledon towel from Wimbledon.
Oh, fantastic.
So
That's cool.
it was a neat time, and meeting all the staff. And you didn't really realize how many people were actually watching it until you kind of start going out and talking tennis with people. But that was a special time.
That was really cool to watch. I forgot what I think I was out of town, but the time that they did the watch party at Coda,
Right.
like that looked really cool, and I was really bummed I wasn't at that because that was they do when we can get a full would you get a full on watch party for a non-tech specific event, but that's still tech. It's really cool stuff. So I'm glad he was able to y'all were able to get help from that as well. And
President Cabrera did a great job. It was a special time for a lot of people.
That's really cool. Let's start looking forward to this season, I guess, which is right around the corner now. Y'all got a lot of the same guys, the main guys from last year between Martin, Daniel, Chopra, Sachdev, and the others. Of course, yeah, a lot of continuity, but what's exciting about this year in particular for y'all?
Yeah, I think, like you said, having some of the seniors, are really COVID seniors, that it'll be their 5th year, but a couple of them came in a year early from high school, so they would normally be graduating about this time as well. So, but we got some good leadership on the team. I think the interesting thing is going to be the new guys who came in. We've got a few guys that got ranked, a couple of guys that got ranked in the fall, and the lineup is out there for anybody to take, and we don't just hand spots to people. You got to earn your spots, but at the same time, we take into consideration all the tournaments you've been playing over the break or in the fall, and try to do as well as we can. Tennis is unique in that right now we're sitting here and we're getting ready to start the season, and we're coming off of Christmas break. We call it preseason, but we're not actually able to work with the guys. So we'll have our first practice on Monday.
Okay.
And our first match on Sunday, basically. So we've got to we've got to get going quickly in these practices, but that's a lot in making sure that you have guys that are really working hard over the break. And we've had guys out here training throughout the whole break, and the guys are at home are doing a good job there. So yeah, we're going to jump on it really quick, but that does help to have some of the guys coming back from the previous years.
I'm curious about how y'all build the schedule, because I know there's ITA events and there's ACC stuff that you just gotta play those. But then the other matches you got, like we got get a lot of the local folks, but then also going to California and having Ivy League schools come down this year, which is a fun little wrinkle. Do y'all have a strategy for how you build that? Is there? I mean, I know convenience is a good thing. So you can play Mercer and Georgia State and teams like that. You just drive over and you're there. But what's your thinking behind building the schedule?
Yeah, there's a lot of variables that go into it. The ACC schedule is set in advance, so you already know those matches you're going to play. But outside of that, you're looking obviously to play some tough top teams. We get that. We have a lot of schools close that are really good, but you're also looking to get ranking points to try and get either into the NCAA tournament or hosting with top 16, which is huge come the end of the year. So you're looking at what teams are going to give you the best chance to get ranking points, and you're trying to schedule those as well. And we like to have a balance, teams that maybe are ranked ahead of us, teams that are about our level, and then you're looking at teams where you can maybe have more odds of winning. So I think trying to find that balance, trying to maximize your ranking is what you're looking for when building the schedule.
I think it gets interesting too, because we're adding Stanford, Cal Berkeley, SMU.
Yeah, true.
So we're getting less and less flexibility of those matches outside of conference. So those become more and more important. And with ACC, it's I would say it's the best conference in tennis in the nation. We've won, I think, the NCAA title. I don't know if it's 6 of the last 8 years or something. It's pretty, it's up there. So if you're winning an ACC title, you're really competing to win a national title. So, but yeah, adding those teams in there now, we only have 25 dates between the fall and the spring. So the fall, we usually use 4 dates. So it's down to 21 dates in the spring.
Okay.
And, we add in 13, 14. So you end up, you got very little. In tennis, we do double headers sometimes. And so that's, you got to be careful if you play the second team of the day, that's too tough. They're fresh. You're coming off, and it gets a little interesting. So the scheduling is, I put it on Kevin this year. He's
nice.
So if it goes well, then he gets all the credit. If it goes bad, then it's my fault.
There you go. I was really so just the fact there's an Ivy League school coming down here was really cool to me. Was that something specific y'all and the women figured out? Because I know Penn's coming down to play them as well. Was that just like, oh, this will be a fun thing to do, or how did that come about?
No, they actually sometimes they're scheduling trips to come down, and they're asking, and that we'll do that sometimes if we go up and play Boston College.
Yeah,
might want to play Harvard or somebody. We'll give a call out, and that's just basically how it happened this time. They were coming down to play already.
That's
so
cool.
It's nice to host an Ivy League team for sure.
Yeah. Hosting Brown and then Bama back to back. That's just that's a weird dichotomy right there.
But I'll leave it there.
That'll be fun. It'll be fun to see. I don't want to ask like specifically how many matches y'all think you're gonna win or anything like that, because you got to play them. You want to win them all, of course. But does it feel like y'all have a higher ceiling than last year? I know your recruiting went pretty well. Is there a specific barometer for success y'all have that will give y'all a sense of whether the season was good for y'all or not?
Yeah, that's a great. Of course, our expectations are always very high. I mean, it's we want to host. We'd love to host. That means you're a top 16 team. It's very difficult to do that. It's just there's so many parameters coming with injuries of top players. That type of thing comes into play, as you know, in sports. But no, our expectations are high. But having said that, and we talk about it all the time, we have our goals, we put them up, and end of the day, if we compete like champions, then we're going to do really well this year. If we get caught up in, expectations and those types of things, it's going to be tough because there's a lot of parity in college tennis. And we've seen that over the last few years where we've been pretty good and we've lost some close 4-3s that have really kind of hurt us in the past. And, our expectations were high there. So I think for us, it's going to come down to understanding that any of those teams that you're expected to beat, but you're pretty close to, we got to get really motivated for them to play well against us. And I think we're going to do well.
That's cool. I like that. And the times I played tennis in some sort of competitive fashion, just thinking anything beyond that point, whatever point or whatever game you're in, is definitely killed me. So
we had one of our top players, Guillermo Gomez, back in the day. Kevin played with Guillermo, and he was a great competitor. He came and spoke to the team recently, and he works at Microsoft. Really successful guy, really driven. But I think he's got the most wins ever at Georgia Tech in tennis. And he was telling the guys, and he goes, it's really easy to get up for Georgia. It's easy to get up for your top play. He goes, y'all don't need to worry about that. You'll be there. You'll be fine. He goes, it's all those other teams. He goes, those are ones I was terrified to play. And I go, terrified? That's an interesting word. He goes, no, I was so scared. I did not want to lose to these teams. He goes, I got so up for those matches and he never lost those matches.
Yeah.
He absolutely refused to lose those matches, but he went into them scared. And it was an interesting.
Those teams don't got anything to lose. It's different for them. So
he was not afraid to compete against them. He was not afraid if they started playing well. That didn't bother him. He was already expecting it.
Yeah.
So it was a great mindset to go into learning how to, finish out a full season of matches. So hopefully our guys took that to heart.
Hopefully that'll be the case. I do want to, before we finish, I want to ask about your Tech favorites. So between food spots, buildings, professors, since you both were at Tech. First, favorite food spot on campus or nearby?
Go ahead.
Wow, that's a great question.
And we go to Tin Drum all the time. I hate to say that, but
I do too. So
we just end up there. I don't know if that's like a favorite spot, but
yeah, Tin Drum on campus is hard to beat. Georgia Tech Hotel breakfast is
really okay.
Special. Yeah, they have a great buffet breakfast there.
Our guys love that. They get a Georgia Tech breakfast pre-match. They're set.
That's the best start to the day.
Okay, I despite being on campus for 6 years, that has never come to mind. So, all right, I'll put that in the back pocket. Favorite building that is not Ken Byers?
Oh, let's see. It's definitely not Skiles. Okay.
Agreed.
Is that okay?
That's absolutely correct.
It's not the old computer lab. So, I'll have to. Where could I go back to? Woodruff was like the coolest place that I was at in my day, and it's not anymore. But it was the desired place to live. Isn't that amazing?
No, I've talked to people who were like, I've talked to people who were like, so when I got to campus was when they shut down the buffet. So I completely missed that era, and they had opened West Village when I got to campus, and people, even then, people were like, "Oh yeah, this used to be the thing," and I'm like, "This doesn't look fancy to me."
That was my place. So I'm gonna stick to old school.
Awesome.
I'm gonna go. I study mechanical engineering here, so our mechanical engineering building, it's a little unassuming on the outside, and then you go in, and it's really cool inside. So that was I enjoyed that more and more every year I was here. I love that place.
Nice. And then lastly, do you have any professors that you love that you still think about that left an impression? I know it could be very different things.
Okay, so you said that you still think about and that you love. Is there an opposite to that? Because
that's a good point. That could mean a lot of different things.
My first classes I showed up to was a calculus class, and I sat down, and I told you I came with Brian Shelton. We sat and looked in this classroom, and we're going, this guy had the board filled up. I didn't think we were late. We were like maybe a minute late because we couldn't find the class. he had the board filled up with all this stuff, and we're like, man, we got in the wrong class. Went back and said to our academic advisor, where is this classroom? And she goes, no, you were in the right class. They were already like day 3, it looked like. I went back there, and that professor, he didn't care whether you're an athlete or whether you're the best student in the class. He was gonna get you going. So that kind of terrified me. I think I still have nightmares, but we did okay in that class. We're better for it.
There you go.
We're much better for it.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, I had a professor in College of Engineering, Professor Jacobs, he's still at Georgia Tech. He's a vice provost, but I still keep in touch with him.
Nice.
I loved his class, and he followed me when I was playing professionally afterwards, and we still stay in touch a little bit. So he was a great professor,
Nice.
great guy. So that was a great relationship there.
All the IE professors were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Back in the day, we had some great ones. So those and they continue to do such a good job in the industrial engineering department. Incredible school, and I was honored to go through it.
That's really good. I was in business, so I've much different experience comparatively, but they got some good folks in there as well. Kenny and Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the show. I will certainly be at as many matches as I can get to. So I will be. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to say hi to you in person there. But beyond that, thanks for coming on.
Love to have you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks again to Kevin and Kenny for coming on the podcast. That was actually easily one of my more favorite interviews I've done with the folks from Georgia Tech, just anywhere. It was fun faces. It's always good to have folks that have been around the institute for a long time and have good stories to tell. So hopefully I think we'll definitely have them back on again. I think they earned a second time. I wanted to just give just a top-down overview of what the season's going to look like for the team, and just a general idea of, if you're new to college tennis, how this all goes down. For one, the ranking system you want to follow is the ITA rankings. ITA. That is where you will find rankings for team, singles, and doubles. The singles and doubles rankings are not out right now, but there is preseason team rankings. Georgia Tech is not ranked on the guys' side. On the girls' side, we are ranked 20th. Let me go through the guys' side initially. Some context, as is the case with basically every other sport, the ACC is extremely competitive in both men's and women's tennis and has a lot of ranked teams that we're dealing with. So we always play a very stacked conference schedule. On the men's side, Virginia is the number 1 ranked team, and then there are plenty of other ranked teams, and I'm going to include the incoming ones in 2024 just for the sake of argument here, just to kind of emphasize the point. Stanford ranked 9th, Duke ranked 8th, UNC ranked 13th, Wake Forest ranked 15th, Florida State 20th, North Carolina State 21st. So lots of teams there on the guys' side. On the girls' side, this is where we are ranked. North Carolina is ranked number 1 on the girls' side. Stanford is 4. North Carolina State is 9. Virginia is 12. Duke is 15. Cal is 19. Tech is 21. Miami is 21st. So tons of teams there, and we're going to play a lot of these teams going forward. Of course, not Cal and Stanford quite yet, but we're going to get there eventually in 2025. This is a large sample size of teams that are very tough to play. Tech has a history of losing some nail biters to a lot of these teams, and we certainly are competitive, and we have the players to win any match we can get our hands on. So I think there's no reason why this team can't be really competitive. And as Kenny said, they want to host, and that's the goal for both the men's and the women's teams, to be in that top 16 stretch and host the first round of the NCAA tournament. We'll get into how the tournament structure works and everything in later episodes, so stay tuned for that. But for what you need to know now, they're going to play a mix of most of the matches now are going to be head-to-head. There is a couple ITA invitational tournaments that both the men's and women's teams will play. The men's team gets started this Sunday at home, so you can see them this Sunday, January 14, at noon. They're going to play Brown, as I was talking about with Kenny and Kevin, and then the next day, on MLK Day, they host Alabama, also at noon. Every match at Ken Byers is free to come to, so absolutely go at any time you want. If it's cold, they play inside, or if it's raining, they play inside. And when it's nice outside, it is so nice outside, and they play on the outdoor courts, and it's a really fun time to go to those matches. Scheduling wise, I don't want to rehash that because I talked about that with Kenny and Kevin. In terms of big matches, Georgia is going to be on the road for the guys. Georgia's very, very good, and then the women are going to play Georgia at home at Ken Byers on campus. In terms of those notable teams that the ACC has that the guys play. They play North Carolina, they play Duke, they play Wake Forest, and they play North Carolina State back to back, all on the road. So that's going to be insane. And then we host Boston College, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Louisville at home, as well as Virginia Tech. And then Virginia we have to host to wrap up the season. So, that's going to be fun. The women, on the other hand, they have a similarly pretty tough schedule. They're going to start at the Michigan Invitational. Michigan is also ranked on the women's side. They will not be on campus until January 30, Tuesday, when they play Georgia State. Notable matches to come out to if you want to come see the girls play. Northwestern, February 4 would be a great one. That's a Sunday at noon. I believe that is the weekend where there is no NFL football, so a very good weekend to come hang out on campus if you so please. As I mentioned about the Ivy League matchups, Tech's match against Penn is February 17th on a Saturday. It's an 11 a.m. match, and then the next day Georgia comes down on Sunday the 18th. Then they're going to have an ACC slate, which includes tough teams like Virginia, North Carolina, Duke, Florida State, Miami. A lot of those matches, sadly, are on there. A lot of the ranked teams, Tech, both on the men's and women's sides, we got to play on the road. So rough draw there. Not every ACC team has a tennis team, which is why we end up playing a lot of the same teams over and over. In that case, it's not like football or baseball where almost everyone has a team, and so we can play a rotation of them like in other sports. So I want to give some shout out to the roster on the women's side because there's some really big names there. The ones to look out for: Kylie Bilchev, Carol Lee, Kate Shirabura, and Alejandra Cruz. And Ruth Marsh. These are the returning folks or the seniors on this team. And Mahak Jang. They've been around for a bit. They're really good. Kylie Bilchev and Carol Lee, for the most part, are your top line people to look out for. And then we have some freshmen here: Mira Jasudison, Given Roach, Ginger Foster. And those are our freshmen for this year. So I think that's all y'all really need to know at this point. Thanks for listening. This is talking to the folks at Georgia Tech is one of our favorite things that we get to do. If you do not know, or if you're new to this podcast, this is all a product of FromTheRumbleSeat.com, which is the SB Nation site for all things Georgia Tech news and stuff. We kind of point ourselves more towards, at least on the podcast, we try to cover things that isn't usually getting as much coverage. So hence tennis, we cover football and basketball and all the good stuff. But we always make sure that every other team on campus makes sure it gets their day in the sun with us as well. So if you've been around to the podcast and you know what's going on here, just some recent episodes that you might enjoy. We covered the new comprehensive campus plan, that's kind of a non-sports episode, but in that episode there is a very large strategic plan that Tech is going to take into 2031 and how campus evolves, how it relates with the rest of the city of Atlanta, how it relates itself with the environment at Georgia Tech as well. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff there that Jake Grant, one of our co-hosts, dove into really well for us. Our most recent episode was episode number 200 of this, canonically, of the podcast. And so we brought back some of our old hosts from years past to help do that episode with us and do some remembering of some times and to kind of just refresh why we're here. And that is to be a place where people that love Georgia Tech can listen to Georgia Tech alums talk about the athletics of everything, some of the non-athletic stuff, and just kind of be a place where you can hear some more in-depth news and thoughts on the parts of campus and the sports world that usually don't get as much attention as they should, honestly. So that's where we're at. My name is Jack Purdy. You can find us at FromTheRumbleSeat.com. You can find me at Jack Nicholas on Twitter. You can find the blog on Twitter at FTRS blog. These episodes are posted on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and as we always put a link up to it on the website as well. So with that, thanks for listening. We will be back very soon.